See, this is a topic which is misunderstood by many Muslims and misused by many of these Christians. You see, about 50 years ago, a guy named John Swansbrough and his cronies, they went loose. People like Patricia Crowe, Goldziher, Arthur Jeffrey, they went mad at it. They were talking about a committee in Iraq during the Abbasid period in the 8th century. They were the ones who wrote the Quran. Who? A committee in Abbasid period. This proves something that even they couldn't believe or imagine, that the Quran is written only by one man. Even they cannot imagine it. They say it should be more than one man, a committee of people who come together, who put the Quran together. This is what they say. But with the foundings of thousands of manuscripts of the Quran, many of which goes back to the first and the second half of the 7th century, all of these nonsense arguments about the committee and whatnot was put to rest, okay, based on the foundings of manuscripts. One of these manuscripts which are found is Mingana 1572a, which is dated in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, by Dr. Fideli, to be dated back to the year 645 by carbon dating, and was 95.4% accurate. Do you hear that? 645, This is the Birmingham manuscript. This is about 13 years after the death of the beloved Prophet. Within 13 years, could you imagine that? This is around the time of the 3rd Caliph of Islam, Osman radiallahu anhu. So we can call this manuscript a companion mushaf. Did you know that? We could call this manuscript a companion mushaf. Manuscript 328c, which is part of this Birmingham manuscript, are all of them of the 1st century Islam, okay? And they have about 8% of the Quran in them, you see? And by the way, this evidence of these manuscripts proves the hadith. Which hadith? The hadith of Sahih Bukhari, volume 5, book 58, number 155, which says that the Quran was already collected in the lifetime of our Prophet, peace and blessing be with him, in his lifetime. So we had the Birmingham manuscript, we had the Mingana 1572, we have Mingana Saraya Medina 1a or Medina 1c, top copy which has 99% of the Quran, or the Tübingen which has 26% of the Quran, which is dated back to the year 649 or 657, between those years. Could you imagine what we have, Yet, these evangelicals, who don't even have nothing of the 1st century of the New Testament, they turn around and say, oh, Birmingham manuscripts, only 8%, doesn't mean nothing. Very weird, but okay. Now, how many percentage of the Quran do we have in the 1st century of Islam? Could you guess,
Within the 1st century of Islam?
Yes. How many percentage of the Quran do we have?
99.96.
You see, Islamic awareness, they said about 96% of the Quran, but Haytham Sidqi says this is outdated. And he says we have 100% of the Quran within the 1st century multiple times. You hear that? The complete Quran in the 1st century. Marijn van Putten, he says the same. Sean Anthony, even he accepts this idea about 100% of the Quran within the 1st century of Islam. We have Codex Parisino Patriplanetes, which has 46% of the Quran. Codex BL or R2165, if I'm not mistaken, this is from Cambridge, 57% of the Quran. Codex Mashhad from my own country, about 90% of the Quran. Imagine that all of that goes back in the 1st century of Islam. Codex 331, about 29%. Codex 330G, 21%. Codices of Marcel, which are a couple of them, but 17, 18, and 19, which go back to the 1st century, they have 5, 10, and 7% of the Quran. You see that it is multiple attestation.